and welcome to an episode of a Wicked Parley. I'm your host, Justin, and my fellow co-host, Rose. Tonight we have a special topic to talk about, which is climate change. And when it comes to climate change, there's a multitude of different things that could be discussed and certain things, but we're going to try and look at maybe the detailed science of it and perhaps interject some psychology involving perhaps things like denial and some of the things that often get talked about alongside climate change. So hopefully you'll be along for the interesting discussion and have a good time. And with that, there's a few updates I guess we could have. So what's the first update, Rose?
Very, very quickly, hopefully. The Wheel of Challenge. It's a new month, people, and this is the first episode of the new month.
Oh, God, I am not looking forward to the next challenge. Welcome back. Oh, God. Okay, so did you want to discuss the effects of the previous month's challenge? Or do you want me to explain? Do you want to explain what the challenge was trying to test for exactly, and then go over it? How would you like?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, huh?
Oh, so go ahead. Go ahead.
So, for those of you who may or may not remember, last month's monthly challenge was essentially to go to sleep on time and get a full 7 to 8 hours of sleep, and see how it affected our lives throughout the month, whether it made it worse, whether it made it better.
Also, your audio is a little loud.
A little loud? Okay.
Yeah, just dial it down just a sec.
All
right, you're good there.
But yeah.
God,
so
that challenge last month was just horrible. I mean, just getting 8 hours of sleep probably could have been done on any other month, and it might have been okay. But like, we started on July, and because I live in the United States, the 4th of July. And so for the first 2 weeks of the challenge, I was having intermittent firework detonations within 100 yards of where I was going to bed. So I'd been planning to go sit down and go to bed, lay down and go to bed and whatnot.
Yep.
And I would hear, I'm like, is there a war going outside? How the hell am I supposed to go to bed?
Oh.
Yes, we are editing things, host, so, yeah.
Where'd the bun go?
Yes.
Bun is taking a break. Bun has now become a rose, much like the namesake.
And when it comes to the overall thing, I would have to say that the benefits for sleeping, for me at least, didn't seem to happen at all. Honestly, getting 8 hours of sleep was painful, irritating. I was less productive. It was just honestly a horrible nightmare experience. Was it unique? Might I have a unique perspective on this? Perhaps. I know there's lots of people who enjoy sleep. So, what was your experience like, Rose?
So typically, before the challenge, I typically got 7 to 8 hours of sleep anyway. It wasn't usually at once, because if I didn't get enough hours at night, I would just take naps throughout the day to, quote, make up for those. I know for quite a number of people that's not actually a thing, but it worked for me. So it wasn't anything new besides having to make sure to go to bed early. Actually early. Rather than, just being an adult not on curfew.
I mean, there was something I remember you complaining about.
Not being able to chat with my night owl friends.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure you're...
I didn't like that. I appreciate my sleep. But, now I'm just used to getting more and more sleep, and that's not good.
Oh, no. So you had a lasting...
Because it's I had more sleep than I usually do, because, I still felt the need to take some naps.
Okay, all right.
Rather than getting 7 to 8 hours just in general, I was getting 9 to 11.
Good God. All right. Whew. All right. Let's find out what laborious challenge this month has in store. And good God, if it's spicy food with every meal.
Okay. If it's spicy food for every meal, I am sorry. Okay, hold on. I just need to double check a couple things. Perfect. We made it pretty, kinda.
Yeah, okay, so good God. Okay, what we got? All right, come
on. Hope and pray, hope and pray.
Oh, no!
Uh-oh.
No! No!
No. Added sugar. Okay, do you want to explain what we mean by this one?
Yeah, I'll explain.
Hi, Kyle. You came in just in time for the pain.
Hi, Kyle. Oh.
I legitimately will not be able to. Oh my god.
Okay, so no added sugar means like if you have coffee, you can't like add sugar or like creamer that has sugar in there. Like you can only have sugar from natural sources, from like fruits and vegetables and things like that. So that means no ice cream, no juices, no sodas, which is not really a big deal. But god damn it! I wanted to make brownies!
We had so many things planned food-wise.
Why?
Dang it!
This is.
So it's like even ingredients like when you're cooking ingredients like oil, salt, not salt obviously, but like other things and flavorings. We're not allowing those either because of the whole, if it says added sugar on the label, it's a no-go?
That's correct.
Oh, that means I can't make curry when I go back. Oh no. Oh no.
Hey, you know what? If it saves you, I will be the one who takes the challenge all by myself if need be. This sucks.
This is America. Everything has added sugar,
especially
snacks.
I know.
It's exactly.
That's why I'm thinking like I'm gonna live off of carrots and like pineapple and like.
This is, of all the months to do it. I mean, this is going to be pain in general, but like,
this is going to be absolutely just horrendous.
I am already imagining what run result is going to be.
No, I don't, no, please no. Like, but no, I don't.
Okay. Okay.
I have 2 gallons of crystal orange juice that I can no longer have, which I'm now gonna have to offer to my guests and watch them enjoy.
Oh, that doesn't last a month, does it?
No.
Oh
no. Okay. All right. I am going.
As you chat, don't you dare. Do we want to just move on?
With added sugar? No, thank you. And yeah, let's move on. Let's move on to happier things. You know, less
I'm not quite
destructive and harmful things. Actually, that's not entirely true. It's very destructive. Let's go on to climate change.
I was about to say, my topic today is not exactly the happiest thing. All right.
No, not really.
So today is about climate change. And real quickly,
so excited.
We're going to show 3 different clips from YouTube. Again, all things will be in the description after the live stream is done. Just to give a showcase as to what we are talking about when it comes to climate change, specifically, sometimes what it looks like.
Yes.
All right. So, first things first, we have a comparison of the Hoover Dam between 1941 and, well, this year, 2021.
And here's the thing about this that I find most interesting. You ignore the lines. It's the water level, which is so startling.
It's not as obvious in that shot, but
yeah, in that shot, it's like holy crap.
Here, it's kinda.
Mm-hmm. Gotta kind of zoom out to find the water. Na 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 na.
Da, 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 da. Like, look at that.
That's a crazy.
Look at how deep that is. It went from here here. I.e. from here all the way down to there.
Also, look at the color.
Yeah. I mean, 1, it's the resolution, but like 2,
yeah.
Like, look at how white that is in comparison to like how dark this upper part is.
Yeah. All right, so
that's the Hoover Dam comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Heavy damage after fatal floods in Germany. That poor bridge didn't stand a chance.
Yeah, but there's another little housing thing that didn't stand a chance either, right?
Yeah, quite a number of things didn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
Like, look at that.
That's just so much damage.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, da, da. Oh. Oh god! Oh no! Oh god! You know what? If you ever want to see what a house looks like, if it's fed through like one of those like noodle machines, you know, when you're making pasta. Hey, look!
Yeah.
It's a noodle machine, house edition.
Yeah, give me 1 second here. I want to pop out a couple things. So that was flooding.
Yes.
Now we have hurricanes.
All right, now so this is one that terrifies me the most because, like, honestly, like I love lots of places that have hurricanes, and I don't like her. Oh, what the fuck happened? No, insulation and roof, it is gone. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna, oops. No, it didn't make it. That's
It's just fine. It's just fine.
You know what? It's gonna water the living room a little bit. You know what I'm saying? just water the living room. You know, it'll be fine.
But yeah, those are some of the examples of what's resulted due to. Okay, it's a natural disaster, yeah, but like they're happening a lot more nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember, you know, hearing, you know, I would say like people who were kind of older in like the 90s, say that like, you know, like this storm is a, you know, once in 100-year storm. It's a, you know, it's a really rare phenomena. And then the same phenomena or something that is even more powerful or more disastrous or more dangerous happens a couple years later. And then that happens again and again and again. And so it's like, instead of this phenomena being once every 100 years or once every 10 years, you're seeing it happen as once every, like, you know, couple of years. And also places in the world that normally experience very consistent weather of sorts are having extreme things happen. If I remember correctly, there was an article that I came across where there was a place where you never see rainfall, or it's very rare. I think it's the Gobi Desert, near China, or in China, in some parts of it, and it like receives almost no rainfall. But yet there was like a period where, for like intermittently for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, it was getting consistent rainfall. It's like, that's not supposed to be there.
It's like, that's not normal.
Yeah, and also, like, if you, like, I live in California in the United States, and, in California, it's kind of a Mediterranean climate, especially as you get closer to the coast. And what I've noticed is that in Southern California, it gets really, 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 really dry, and we've had a lot of water shortages for obvious reasons. It was originally a desert of sorts. But the whole state is starting to dry up. And there's some evidence to suggest that the airflow, the air currents that happen over the continent have shifted and they're pushed more northward, and so that cooling airflow is further north than it is. So you get some pretty rough phenomena, particularly dry, and you can start to have lots of water shortages, which is a big problem considering that there's a large population in Southern California. It's where the bulk of most people in California are, and if there's not a lot of water getting to those people are in trouble. So yeah, there are lots of beautiful flowers all over the world, and Death Valley does have some of the best. I had a professor who was very much into botany, and showed some really great shots because he would travel during the summertime there. So yeah, definitely agree with you. Death Chat. Anyways, yeah, I mean, Rose, you got any thoughts on any of that stuff?
I don't like it.
You don't like it?
Not really. Like, I feel bad for those I feel bad for those who are living in areas that were not easily adaptable to the new weather conditions.
Definitely.
Like, California, we're used to the drought. I desperately want rain, and that's not something I usually say because I can't do much in the rain. I'm like that wet cat who doesn't really like getting wet. Can't do nothing.
But you're like, I'm ready for rain. I'm ready for it.
Like, I wasn't expecting, like, snowstorms in Texas, flooding in the UK, or when they get their heat waves, because the UK was not built for heat waves.
Yes, there are no AC units. at all in the UK.
Not naturally built into the thing. They've started to do it now because of the recent heat waves, but before, like, people were always complaining and like shooting them down. I've seen so many posts. It's like, why are you complaining? We get triple digits over here. Da 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 da. Here's the thing between those of us with triple digit weather in California versus in the UK. California, we expect those heats and have built our houses accordingly.
Yeah,
the UK was not.
I will tell you this much. So, if any of you guys watched the Twitch, I think it was our first live stream on Twitch, right? When we were covering, I believe, Jackbox.
Yeah, we were doing Jackbox first.
My AC went out in my place. And so I was, for 3 days, dealing with 103 degrees in my place with no AC. And I'll tell you right now, that was no fun. So those people in the UK who were complaining, I mean, they were justified.
They were.
In my mind, hell yeah, you need to complain. So
it's like, you have to remember, we may be used to it, but other people are not.
Yeah. And obviously, when it comes to Texas, Texas is a pretty big state. But I think if you get closer to Oklahoma, you should probably be ready for all 4 seasons. And so, like, there should be some semblance of awareness of different things. So it should, I mean, like, while it was a freak weather phenomena, it probably should have been understood. But, at the end of the day, freak weather is just freak weather. So, and so, I mean, like, honestly, when it comes down to it, like, it should be, when freak weather happens frequently, it needs to be looked at with a scientific eye. And so that way you take it seriously and not have some of the politicians and some of their responses of, oh, it's not climate change, global warming, it's just a random act of God. It's like, okay, how many random acts of God does it take for you to do something? Could you imagine, like, you get, like, your insurance company, like, you have, like, insurance on your house, and the only thing that doesn't count is acts of God, and you're like, what the fuck? This is not an act of God, it's a snowstorm. Well, because it happened during this month, it's considered an act of God. So you're not.
You're an idiot. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's like, this is still damage to my gosh darn house.
So, upon researching this topic, I found a series of articles that I felt that were really good. The article that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention was an article that was, I believe, from the New York Times. And because of its length, we were unable to, present the entire thing in its total thing. However, we're going to present the parts that we find to be the most important. And so what's going to happen is that Rose is going to read the article, because I'm going to mispronunciate things occasionally, and I'd like the audience to have the fairness involved in it. So if you guys want to look on the article, then you can feel free to follow along. We will kind of jump around a little bit on certain sections.
A little bit.
Yeah. And
we also have an added bonus.
And there's an added bonus. So after she's done reading through a section of the article, we're going to talk. Me and her are going to discuss it. If you guys want to be added part of the discussion, we'd love to hear back some of your feedback around it. If you're watching this in the future, go ahead and throw your your opinions or comments in the comment section, and if you do that, I'll read it. And if you want, I'll even respond. So there's that. And because we know that reading an article can sometimes be a little dry, I thought, why not we play a game so you guys have something to watch while we're discussing this topic. And so, what other game would be fun to do than Halo? So.
And to be tiny!
Yeah. So,
Bunk.
I'm back to my circle. I'm back to my circle. Oh no. Oh god. I'm trapped inside circle. I want to get out. Oh no! I've been moved over to the side. I'm back in the circle.
Yes.
I'm trapped.
So, we have put the article in the live chat for anybody who wants to read along.
Mm-hmm.
And we will entreat you to playing some games. Or watching some games. Okay. Here, let me go ahead and put this up so that you can hear when somebody shoots you.
Okay, like that's necessary because I'm going to die.
I mean, so will I when I join you in a bit, so.
Okay, and are we on controls? Like, I can move it? Yes?
Yes, you are free to do it, please, yes.
Okay. Save changes, sure. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so go ahead. Let's hear the
all right.
first section of the article, huh?
Yep. So I want to keep track of this for a bit later, actually. So the first thing of the article is, how do we know climate change is really happening? Climate change is often cast as a prediction made by complicated computer models, but the scientific basis for climate change is much broader, and models are actually only one part of it, and for what it's worth, they're surprisingly accurate. For more than a century, scientists have understood the basic physics behind why greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide cause warming. These gases make up just a small fraction of the atmosphere, but exert outsized control on Earth's climate by trapping some of the planet's heat before it escapes into space. This greenhouse effect is important. It's why a planet so far from the sun has liquid water and life. However, during the Industrial Revolution, people started burning coal and other fossil fuels to power factories, smelters, and steam engines, which added more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. Ever since, human activities have been heating the planet. We know this is true thanks to an overwhelming body of evidence that begins with temperature measurements taken at weather stations and on ships starting in the mid-1800s. Later, scientists began tracking surface temperatures with satellites and looking for clues about climate change in geologic records. Together, these data all tell the same story. Earth is getting hotter. Average global temperatures have increased by 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit, or 1.2 degrees Celsius, since 1880, with the greatest changes happening in the late 20th century. Land areas have warmed more than the sea surface, and the Arctic has warmed the most, by more than 4 degrees Fahrenheit since just the 1960s. Temperature extremes have also shifted. In the United States, daily record highs now outnumber record lows 2-1. Talk about a disaster. So, what do you think of what I just read?
Honestly, when I think about it, I think of, oh, no, duh. Like, you know, when it comes to it, like, I remember, like, seeing articles and seeing, like, various scientific papers going back to the 30s that were warning of global warming and, what we call it global climate change now, but they didn't call it that. Absolutely, like, I find the fact that, like, it took that long for scientists to realize, oh, hey, wait a minute, like, this is what's going on. I think it's just kind of a convenient excuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like it. Come on, it's been happening, people. Why are you making any of these excuses, or why are you only just admitting that, yeah, it's happening now?
Yeah, honestly, like, to me, like, I think that it's more like, it's just like they're trying to protect their interests. I think politicians get paid by, you know, various individuals for, you know, funding politically, like, for their next campaigns, or maybe even privately. And so, like, to me, like, I think that a lot of their efforts are their own interest. They're not caring about the people in whom they represent very often. And it's very rare that I see a politician that actually gives a crap about what they're actually, you know, like, doing, per se.
Yeah.
I would say, like, Elizabeth Warren is one of those few people that I've seen in recent years that actually cares about their base. But it's not. But, like, she's like not. Like, I wouldn't say that she's the norm. She's like the outside.
An exception.
Yeah, definitely the exception to the rules. I don't know. Like, I think the biggest thing that I find interesting is that you'd think that with all the evidence, you know, of what the hell? Sorry. Exactly. Distraction.
You're good.
But when it comes to all the arguments that have been put forth scientifically, you'd think that there'd be more consensus in the media at the very least. But the media presents the political opinion as much or even more than the actual scientific one, which is the real problem, because that's when people get influenced.
There's actually a later section about this entire thing, too.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the whole global temperatures increasing by so much? Like, yeah, it's only 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit, or 1.2 degrees.
That's huge.
It's absolutely huge, but, like, some people don't think it is. There's a good analogy that I remember where you compare it to when somebody has a fever.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't remember the standard body temperatures, especially in Celsius, but, like, 1 degree change in Celsius can go from, like, healthy to sick to, like, very sick, and then very sick to death.
Like when I look at it is that they say that it's the average annual temperature is that particular increase. It's 2 degrees. But the thing that you got to think about is what's that mean for like if you're in a place that already gets hot, right? Is it even habitable then? Like, is it even possible to survive? If it gets to like 130 degrees, in some parts of the world, is that habitable? I'm going to say it's probably not. And without some extreme effort.
Mm-hmm. It's actually mentioned later on in the article too.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah, we keep jumping around. This is what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I don't remember whether or not I'm going to be reading the paragraph or not. People can hit Control Find on the article themselves. But there have actually been places which do reach 125 plus. They had to actually make a new category on the temperature maps. I looked at that and I read it and I was absolutely horrified because I don't even like 105 degree weather.
Yeah, like I hate the fact that like California, it's become regular that like from about mid-June until about early October, it's considered summertime, and during like the at least 2 months of that period, it's almost continuously 100 degree or hotter. And it's just like, that's just not, I mean, you can't go outside, I mean, like I'm a white guy and I'm just like, I spend 15 minutes outside, instant sunburn.
Instant sunburn, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, even you got a sunburn.
Yeah, even I got
a sunburn.
I know, I tan like a brownie, okay?
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So, should I go ahead and read some comments about this section?
Sure.
All right. Let's see. Dassy Chat buying a summer home in the Arctic to have beachfront property later. That's genius, but also morbid, according to host.
I think it's, not far off.
Yeah. And then Dassy Chat also mentions that the Middle East does get into those high temperatures. They essentially spent a summer cooking in the desert.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Ugh.
I would be dead. Like just
I'd absolutely dead. Be so upset. I'd be like, it's that furious version of hangry. Like, and hangry is already pretty bad.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we move on to the next one?
Absolutely.
Sure. All right. So the next section is how much agreement is there among scientists about climate change? Oh, hold on. Before I get into that, we have 2 more comments about the first section. Kyle says California's fire season is now from June to December. Excuse me.
Yeah, I that's probably true. That's probably true.
Son of a. An additional issue is that humans take months to acclimatize to a new environment, so sudden spikes are more dangerous than trends. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, God, I don't even...
Smokey's got to work overtime.
Yeah, honestly, when it comes down to it, I feel like that is a really good point, but I think there's a lot more there, too. It's more like humans can acclimate themselves pretty quickly to a pretty diverse set of circumstances, but I think that the thing about it is that it's not just humans that are impacted by this. It's like our entire ecosystem. And if you're a person who ever even considers, even for a moment, that you could live without other species, you may want to revisit that conclusion if you have.
You may want to revisit biology.
Because honestly, you need regions of the world for a wide variety of reasons. Like one of the examples I always like to think of whenever I think about environmental science is that the oceans people just think of as it's not important at all. Like it's not an important thing in any way, shape, or form. We can dump fish, do as much as you want, right? But when you think about it, the oceans are pretty much where most of the oxygen that we breathe gets produced. Like it's not trees. It's actually the phytoplankton and other stuff that is part of an intricate system that essentially feeds our environment through a multitude of processes. And I think that when someone tries to deny that type of environmental necessity, they are missing a pretty important piece of the puzzle of what makes them okay. Mm-hmm. Damn it. I was trying to
All
assassinate.
right. With that note, we'll go ahead and move on to the next section, which again is how much agreement is there among scientists about climate change? There's no denying that scientists love a good old-fashioned argument, but when it comes to climate change, there is virtually no debate. Numerous studies have found that more than 90% of scientists who study Earth's climate agree that the planet is warming and that humans are the primary cause. Most major scientific bodies, from NASA to the World Meteorological Organization, endorse this view. That's an astounding level of consensus given the contrarian, competitive nature of the scientific enterprise, where questions like what killed the dinosaurs remain bitterly contested. Scientific agreement about climate change started to emerge in the late 1980s when the influence of human-caused warming began to rise above natural climate variability. By 1991, two-thirds of Earth and atmospheric scientists surveyed for an early consensus study said that they accepted the idea of anthropogenic global warming. And by 1995, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a famously conservative body that periodically takes stock of the state of scientific knowledge, concluded that the balance of evidence suggests that there is a discernible human influence on global climate. Currently, more than 97% of publishing climate scientists agree on the existence and cause of climate change, as does nearly 60% of the general population of the United States. So, where did we get the idea that there's still debate about climate change? A lot of it came from coordinated messaging campaigns by companies and politicians that opposed climate action. Many pushed the narrative that scientists still hadn't made up their minds about climate change, even though that was misleading. I may or may not mispronounce names here. Much apologies. Frank Luntz, a Republican consultant, explained the rationale in an infamous 2002 memo to conservative lawmakers. Should the public come to believe that the scientific issues are settled, their views about global warming will change accordingly, he wrote. Questioning consensus remains a common talking point today, and the 97% figure has become something of a lightning rod. To bolster the falsehood of lingering scientific doubt, some people have pointed to things like the Global Warming Petition Project, which urged the United States government to reject the Kyoto Protocol of 1997, an early international climate agreement. The petition proclaimed that climate change wasn't happening, and even if it were, it wouldn't be bad for humanity. Since 1998, more than 30,000 people with science degrees have signed it. However, nearly 90% of them studied something other than Earth, atmospheric or environmental science. And the signatories included just 39 climatologists. Most of them were engineers, doctors, and others whose training had little to do with the physics of the climate system. So, there's some explanation as to just a little bit of
I mean,
what do you think of that?
Honestly, when I think about that, I think of it's kind of like someone talking about psychology when they don't have a background in it. It's like I have a background in English literature. Oh, I can speak about philosophy and the human condition. It's like maybe you can talk about what people have thought about, but you being an expert in that, probably not. Or someone who's a mathematician discussing something relating to, like, say, French. It's like, you might have done stuff, but if you don't have a background, no.
Yeah, just because you study science doesn't mean it's the right type of science to be talking about this.
Yeah. So I think that that's just kind of interesting. But I also think that it's problematic, the fact that politicians have the ability to sway the public opinion to such a degree that they halt progress. Like, I think that, like, it should be about survival. It should be about, like, what is the best thing for everybody. And when the things that you do cost the lives of other people, those are the things that really need to be evaluated carefully. And I think that our current system, at least the system that's been in charge for the last, 10, 20 years or so, regardless of which aisle politically they fall on, both parties seem to get nothing done. And so, at least for when it comes to the United States. And so, to me, I think that, like, a whole new way of approaching it needs to be tackled. It's a must. And if you ignore that, I think there's a lot of disastrous consequences. And I just think that if we're going to have discussions and we're going to do things in a way that is trying to be counterproductive, then be counterproductive in things that aren't going to kill somebody.
We can only hope, huh? I wonder why do you think they even... Okay, so one of the reasons for rejecting the Kyoto Protocol, one of the reasons why they even decided to sign this thing was to, get some scientists to help sway public opinion. So, besides politicians and whatnot, even if we know that's the case, that pretty much 90% of the people who signed the thing aren't even in the right science major to talk about this, why do you think so many people still want to try and believe it, essentially? Are they in denial? Is it just mostly politicians?
I think there's probably a little bit of all of that kind of going on. I think some people are in denial because people don't want to admit when they've done something that's wrong. All right? Like, I think that it's a lot easier when something bad happens to push it on someone else. And I think one thing about people that I think a lot of people would probably agree with and would have a hard time disproving is that most people, whenever given the opportunity to not be the person to blame, that's what they're going to usually want to do.
We like having scapegoats and whatnot?
Yeah. We don't like it. Feels bad to feel like, oh, we've done something wrong. Oh, it's our fault. Like, it doesn't make you want to comply, or maybe you have guilt that's associated to it. And then there's the other side of, well, if we're the responsible for this, then now we have to fix it. Who's going to pay for it? And so, like, I think that when you consider all the different angles, there's probably a lot going on that kind of describe it. I think the thing that makes me the most furious are the people who are climate denials, but they mask their denial behind religious arguments. And those people drive me absolutely mad. Like, I'm like, okay, I can understand you having a religious, pretense when it comes to this. Okay. But God didn't say it needs to be 108 degrees today, all right? That's not what happened, all right? There's some intricate chemistry that goes on that's deciding that. It isn't some all, powerful thing necessarily. So I think when it comes to those particular things, that makes me upset. But I also think that it's not just those people who deny it. I mean, there's the politicians who are being greedy, as we kind of already, I feel like I'm beating that with like a drum, so I'm trying to get away from that a little bit, but I think that it's important. I also think that there's just a lack of true awareness, and I think the media plays a huge part in that. And I really would like to see articles, journals, documentaries, and have news properly present the facts in a way that doesn't make it ambiguous. Because, as you pointed out, there's a consensus inside science for the most part that stipulates a particular narrative. That narrative is not clearly enunciated and widely known outside of the people who are already academically inclined. And so if you, like, the vast majority of people aren't necessarily going to be the most educated. And even if they're educated, there's no guarantee that they're going to be educated in the correct field. So it's like, if the information isn't readily available, most people aren't going to take the time to look at it. So, so when you do present information, make sure it's factual.
Please and thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like mentioned before, I don't see any comments at the moment. So, like we mentioned before, this is a very long article. We'd love to cover the entire thing at a later point. So, we are going to skip around sections. Just because I want to make sure this one gets talked about. We know of climate deniers that say, essentially, oh, it's snowing in places where it shouldn't be before. How's it global warming? So there's a section that talks about this. So I want to get this one out of the way just so we know we've covered it. So the section itself is called, How Can Winters in Certain Places Be Getting Colder If the Planet is Warming? When a big snowstorm hits the United States, climate denialists can try to cite it as proof that climate change isn't happening. In 2015, Senator James Inhofe, an Oklahoma Republican, famously lobbed a snowball in the Senate as he denounced climate science. But these events don't actually disprove climate change. While there have been some memorable storms in recent years, winters are actually warming across the world. In the United States, average temperatures in December, January, and February have increased by about 2.5 degrees this century. On the flip side, record cold days are becoming less common than record warm days. In the United States, record highs now outnumber record lows 2-1. And ever smaller areas of the country experience extremely cold winter temperatures. The same trends are happening globally. So what's with the blizzards? Weather always varies, so it's no surprise that we still have severe winter storms even as average temperatures rise. However, some studies suggest that climate change may be to blame. One possibility is that rapid Arctic warming has affected atmospheric circulation, including the fast-flowing, high-altitude air that usually swirls over the North Pole, aka the polar vortex. Some studies suggest that these changes are bringing more frigid temperatures to lower latitudes and causing weather systems to stall, allowing storms to produce more snowfall. This may explain what we've experienced in the US over the past few decades, as well as a wintertime cooling trend in Siberia, although exactly how the Arctic affects global weather remains a topic of ongoing scientific debate.
Mm-hmm.
There's more, but I just wanted to give a quick preview because it covers kind of what I wanted to get at.
Mm-hmm.
The whole, it's like, yes, some places are getting colder, however, just because it's cold, it's still not as cold as it used to.
Yeah, honestly, when it comes down to that, like, I think that's just kind of like an obvious thing. It's kind of like people who like would argue that an earthquake doesn't displace the ground. It's asinine. Like there are certain basic things that I would think are generally obvious associated when it comes to weather and climate change. And typically, you have to figure out, okay, well, where's it coming from, first of all? Right, and you have to explain. Okay, if there's warm air coming, it's got the cold air eventually has got to come up somewhere. And if it's not going somewhere, then it's getting stalled, which is the obvious conclusion that the article is making, and it's the one that I think logically tracks.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like Siberia and things like that, like how it impacts like the climate, I would argue based upon just some common reasoning that everything involving the shifting patterns all has small incremental effects. And so what the main effect of it, while it may not necessarily be clear according to the article, I think it'd be a safe way to assume that its impact is probably holding off the most severe effects of global warming or global climate change, depending on how you want to classify it as. And because of that particular thing, I think that if for some reason it stops, let's say the storms stop stalling, and or if they get stalled somewhere else, then we might see a more drastic response to certain weather conditions. Perhaps even if the Arctic warms up, let's say the storms don't stall, right? And and instead it gets carried to a lower latitude and those areas start to get really warm, then ocean level rise would start to increase quite noticeably. And so instead of it being projected like in the next 20 or 30 years that places like Miami will be flooded permanently, or other coastal cities that are currently threatened, perhaps it happens much sooner because the cold weather patterns that were freezing up and holding off some of the development of some of that frozen seawater is now melted and now distributed across the globe, raising that level up sooner than they thought. So there are lots of implications for those things that I think could be explained, but I think the ultimate thing is look at the causes of those things first, and then derive conclusions after you've evaluated some of the causes.
Of course. So, let's see. We do have a couple of comments here.
Okay.
So, from Kyle, apparently climate change was a term coined by conservative marketers to make global warming sound less threatening.
Yeah. I know.
It's so sad that I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very much aware of that. And that's the reason why I say both, because I think that depending upon who listens to this, although I sense that most of the people who are currently watching this we're all in a similar ideological perspective when it comes to this. I don't know who may watch this in the future, and so I want to make sure that the thoughts and opinions that are expressed are as directly targeting the people that I think need to hear it the most. So, so if someone comes across this occasionally, maybe they get jolted with a little bit of information that they perhaps didn't hear, and so that way they can take both concepts and have them kind of be like, okay, they're talking about this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. They also add, we should call it a climate catastrophe or a climate crisis.
I like crisis more than catastrophe.
I do. It's shortened to the point because catastrophe is like, it's bad to say, but I think of actual cats because I've seen way too many puns.
When I think of catastrophe, I just think of like probably apocalyptic events, you know, like major meteoroid strikes or asteroid collisions, or like gamma ray bursts kind of things. I think of cataclysms when I think of that sort of thing, like in the most extremist sense. Like when I say cataclysms, I mean like it's like extremes. And I don't think that climate change itself is it altogether it's an extreme, but the problem is that it's a bunch of smaller issues that are compounding on one another. And I think that if you even took half of the issues seriously and did something about them, the impact that the effects of just taking care of half of the problems would be huge. So yeah, anyways, that's my 2 cents on that particular thing. Were there more comments, or is that it?
That's it for this particular section. Let's see. Let me take a quick look at the time here. It's 9:46, so I'm going to read one more section of the article because I know there's something that we both wanted to get to, and that's like the psychological effects and whatnot.
Yes.
So the article is going to be about more physical effects, but we're going to add to that. Well, you're going to add to that with the psychological ones, because again, you wouldn't ask a math major about psychology stuff, now would you?
Hey, I don't mind asking your opinion on things when.
Yeah, you can ask my opinion, but like if you want to be informative, I'll leave it to you.
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, all right, let me keep track of the time here to make it easier for the chapter system later. All right, so the last section from the article. How bad are the effects of climate change going to be? It depends on how aggressively we act to address climate change. If we continue with business as usual, by the end of the century, it will be too hot to go outside during heat waves in the Middle East and South Asia. Droughts will grip Central America, the Mediterranean, and Southern Africa, and many island nations and low-lying areas from Texas to Bangladesh will be overtaken by rising seas. Conversely, climate change could bring welcome warming and extended growing seasons to the upper Midwest, Canada, the Nordic countries, and Russia. Farther north, however, the loss of snow, ice, and permafrost will upend the traditions of indigenous peoples and threaten infrastructure. It's complicated, but the underlying message is simple. Unchecked climate change will likely exacerbate existing inequalities. At a national level, poorer countries will be hit hardest, even though they have historically emitted only a fraction of the greenhouse gases that cause warming. That's because many less developed countries tend to be in tropical regions where additional warming will make the climate increasingly intolerable for humans and crops. These nations also often have greater vulnerabilities, like large coastal populations and people living in improvised housing that is easily damaged in storms, and they have fewer resources to adapt, which will require expensive measures like redesigning cities, engineering coastlines, and changing how people grow food. There's a bit more information about like more specifics as with comparing a wealthy household versus a poor household. One of the examples they give is the wealthier citizens will be able to prepare themselves and more easily evacuate and recover after certain disasters, or they have better resources to deal with such, for instance, the heat waves. Wealthier households will have better access to AC and ways to cool themselves down in comparison to poorer citizens. That sort of thing. The article goes into more details. So those are some obvious like physical effects on the population because of climate change. What do you have to add to this or for the more psychological aspect?
Well, I think that there's some basic things that are common tropes that are associated whenever you think of your home being destroyed.
Yeah.
I would think that, obviously you're going to create a lot of people who are going to be desperate, a lot of people who are going to be, extremely needy. And whenever you have a desperate, needy population, there's, of course, the chance and opportunity for people to take advantage. And so I would not be shocked if some of this, lack of assistance comes from people wanting to perhaps thin out some of the, the poorer nations. Like if there's there are some pretty dark characters that exist inside some parts of the world that are in control. And we've seen in the past that there are people in this world that would want to see other people suffer and die, and they don't have to have a rhyme or reason. And so just because a group is unprotected doesn't mean that they're not worthy of that protection. And so psychologically speaking, I would imagine fear probably plays a massive role in the people who get impacted by this. I think that there's going to be a sense in some countries that are wealthy that do take action. Maybe other countries will look down on them, or perhaps maybe they'll look down on countries that don't. So I feel like there's a whole lot of things that could technically happen. I think one of the most important elements to understand is that we get diseases all the time. From these far off regions, these climates that have been, industrial, practices have been put forth in these jungles, and you get these contagions and all sorts of unexpected things. If it starts warming up, and maybe there might be other biological things that extend out that are even more dangerous than some of the psychological conditions. Because when someone is presented with a situation where their home is destroyed, and they say they can't rebuild or something like that, and they become a refugee, there are massive psychological effects that take place. But I think the human cost is only one of those elements. And as much as I'd like to talk about it, I think that addressing what to do with a culture that's been displaced is more important, because it's something that we haven't really figured out the right answer for just yet. And so that to me is a concern. I also think that when it comes down to it, outside of just the obvious things of the individual, there's also the fact that the people who this horrible tragedy is going to likely happen to, they're likely going to be the subjects of a campaign put forth by powerful individuals of trying to dehumanize them. And that in itself could create more conflict. So it's there's this thing that I feel is a common trope in human nature that I probably am going to discuss at greater length in the future. Where it seems that there's some reason why we strive for conflict. We desire conflict. And I think that that desire for conflict, when there is none, pushes us to create it. And so this situation is something that I think some people might use to propagate that position or that desire.
Yeah. So, let's see. I know Dasty Chat has a comment for that. They believe more anger as heat increases, global violence erupts as people fight over climate change. I'm saying global violence erupts as people fighting over climate change.
It's water.
It's water.
It's water wars. Honestly, what we'll likely see in the next probably 50 to 60 years, we'll see a war that takes place probably mostly. It'll start off with the bigger powers, it'll be United States or possibly fighting against China or something like that for control. It'd probably be a largely cyber warfare kind of thing. Maybe we might extend to drone bombing campaigns of some kind in some parts of the world, depending upon the circumstance. But it'll begin that way, and then it'll devolve into people fighting for natural resources.
All right. It is 9:54, so I don't think you'll have enough time for a full game.
Yeah, we do. All right, that's fine. We'll diet. We'll pull it down.
We'll cool down?
Yeah, we'll pull it out. We'll pull it out. It's fine.
Yeah, just make sure you get out of the lobby. Unlike the last time, right?
Unlike the last time, yeah, that was bad. That was bad.
Let's go ahead and we're going to. Yep. Yeah, we can just deal. Hold on, let me just go ahead and switch out here. We can put you back into your normal phase rather than the small one.
I can still hear Halo.
Yeah, I know you can. It'll be fine.
Okay.
So, let me go ahead and swap that. Whoa, no, 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 no.
That's 100.
Alright, my bad. So, besides, obviously, the people taking advantage of each other, lack of resources, potential just trauma from everything because of all the loss and whatnot. Which is to be expected because, like you mentioned at the beginning, people losing their homes, it's not exactly the nicest experience. Like with the Paradise Fires in California a couple of years ago, so many people were displaced, and that's traumatic, especially for like elderly and kids.
I knew somebody who lived in Paradise and actually had a loved one die in the fire.
No.
Yeah, I went to school with them, and yeah, I can tell you there's definitely truth to that. There's a huge amount of trauma that's associated with that. So, yeah, honestly.
Yeah. So, honestly, climate change is something that really needs to be discussed and informed because, again, we didn't get to cover it yet in the article, but there is a section about what it would cost to act against climate change and try to reduce it. And I don't even know if there's going to be a point that we can reverse it. I'd love to say that there would be, but I just don't know because it's already so much damage and we're just trying to mitigate things at this point.
I mean, I had a professor several years ago tell me that I asked him because I trusted him. He was a very educated person and he knew what he was saying when he said things. And he was an astrophysicist, and I go, when it comes to discussing climate change and it comes to discussing the various elements that are involved in attempting to reverse it, what exactly is the actual chances of doing that? And he looked at me and was like, "We're fucked." and I was like, oh really? And so there's no chance. He's like, no. He was like, buckle up, go get someplace that's cool now because it won't be there later. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean,
yeah, I'm just imagining.
It's like 90 degrees in Alaska. You know what I'm saying?
What? No, yeah, it's Alaska. Come on.
It's like 90 degrees in Alaska during the summer. Like I was, I know some people who lived there, and I was just thinking like, so every place is in the West is going to be like less nice California. Like, like is that the plan? Is that the global plan? It's like if you were to
plan Mother Nature, is that the plan?
Yeah, if you were to try and reverse the effects, you'd have to find ways of removing the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, and you probably have to construct large capture devices. Which, I think if I remember correctly, there are CO2 recapture stuff that's put in place during some manufacturing plants. So whenever there's plants that now that would produce high amounts of CO2 gases, they do try to recapture some of it. But
that's more research done.
But it's not more research. It's more like that's happening now. It doesn't deal with the stuff that's already here.
Fair.
And so like I think that like if you were just to try and price out how much it would cost to displace the stuff per country, right? Each country would have a different amount. But I think if I remember correctly, the argument was that even if we spent, I think it's like $1 or $2 trillion developing all the necessary installations and technology that would help reduce and fight the effects of climate change, it still doesn't prevent India or China, who are the main pollutants of those particular types of gases, from doing anything about it. And so, like, I think the argument at the end of the day comes down to lead by example, and the United States isn't willing to foot a bill that big. And so if they're not going to do it, then the people who are considered the lead by example types aren't going to win that debate. You're going to be left to basically have lesser countries organize those effects, and ultimately have them be the ones that determine what exactly is going to be done and how, as a collective group, they're going to try and persuade the world to follow their agenda. And I think that's kind of what you see with Japan and with France when it comes to some of the things. So I think personally that every single person has a responsibility to at least some degree when it comes to protecting the environment. And if you together want to pay for a certain tax, have a certain bill that's associated with reducing the overall effects. Now that's what needs to happen, and it needs to happen everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But that's me. That's what I think when it comes to this.
Okay. There's obviously way more we can cover, so we may or may not need a part 2 to this. I don't know.
If people are interested in hearing more about this in more detail, that's the big one. More detail.
More detail.
Email the show. I'll be happy to put together a more detailed episode. This was more like
an overview.
An overview and kind of getting an idea out there about a couple different things and presenting some interesting information for you guys. And also, please forgive me my stumbling over words. I have had a long day, so I apologize.
It's okay. I was stumbling throughout the article.
Nah, you were doing a great job. Don't worry about it. You're doing a great job. All right. Well,
all right.
I guess I guess you're going to be looking forward to the next episode, which will be an episode with a guest, and we're going to be discussing a pretty sensitive topic. Do you want to go ahead and fill them in on the topic, or do you want to leave it to surprise them?
Leave it a surprise, and we'll leave it up for the staff to figure out exactly how to reveal the topic.
Yeah, perhaps maybe observe the thumbnail in a couple of days. It might
thumbnail and title.
Yeah,
thumbnail and title.
It might give you a hint. And if you guys want to watch any of our Twitch live stream stuff, which we do on Sundays, I think they're recorded now, so I think you can actually.
They record up to the last 2 weeks. So currently, there's only the one for Halo and Genshin, but this Sunday, the Halo one's going to disappear. However, as a treat, we have downloaded the thing, and we're working with the staff to pick out some of the best clips.
Yes, and we'll be putting them on the YouTube channel periodically, and we're also going to be having the full live streams saved on Patreon. So if you guys want to check that out, that it'll be very very entertaining. I'll say that much. So with that, I think that wraps everything up. So. I guess we'll see you guys all in the next one. Have a good night, everybody. Later.